I keep you in my heart is where you are. I still think of you, I want you coming back. I remember when we were staring at a photo. Don't forget the way you look me in the eyes, and I keep you in my heart.
And begged him, "This man deserves to have you do this. He loved our nation and has built our synagogues." So Jesus went with them. When Jesus came near the house, Roman commander sent friends to him. He told them to say, "Lord, don't trouble yourself. I'm not good enough to have you come into my house. That is why I did not even think I was fit to come to you. But just say, the word of my servant will be healed. I myself am a man who is under authority, and I have soldiers who obey my orders. I tell this one, go, and he does. I tell the one, come, and he comes. I say to my servant, do this, and he does it." When Jesus heard that, he was amazed at him. He turned to the crowd that was following him. He said, "I tell you, even in Israel, I have not found anyone whose faith is so strong." Roman commander sent friends to him. He told them to say, "Lord, don't trouble yourself. I am not good enough to have you come into my house. That is why I did not even think I was fit to come to you. But just say the word, and my servant will be healed. I myself am a man who is under authority, and I have soldiers who obey my orders. I tell this one, go, and he goes. I tell that one, come, and he comes. I say to my servant, do this, and he does it." When Jesus heard this, he said, amazed at him, he turned to the crowd that was following him. He said, "I tell you, even in Israel, I have not found anyone whose faith is so strong." Then the men who had been sent to Jesus returned to the house. They found that the servant was healed. Jesus raises a widow's son from the dead. Sometime later, Jesus went to a town called Nain. His disciples and a large crowd went along with him. He approached the town gate just as a dead person was being carried out. He was the only son of his mother. She was a widow. A large crowd from the town was with her. When the Lord saw her, he felt sorry for her. So he said, "Don't cry." Then he went up and touched the coffin. Those carrying it stood still. Jesus said, "Young man, I say to you, get up." The dead man sat up and began to talk. Then Jesus gave him back to his mother. The people were all filled with wonder and praise for God. "A great prophet has appeared among us," they said. "God has come to help his people." This news about Jesus spread all through Judea and whole country. Jesus and John baptized. John's disciples told him about all these things, so he chose 2 of them. He sent them to the Lord. They were to ask Jesus, "Are you the one who was supposed to come, or should we look for someone else?" The men came to Jesus. They said, "John the Baptist sent us to ask you, are you the one who was supposed to come, or should we look for someone else?" At that very time, Jesus healed many people. They had illnesses, sicknesses, and evil spirits. He also gave sight to many who were blind. So Jesus replied to the messengers, "Go back to John. Tell him what you have seen and heard. Blind people receive sight. Disabled people walk. Those who have skin diseases are healed. Deaf people hear. Those who are dead are raised to life, and the good news is preached to those who are poor. Blessed are those who do not give up their faith because of me." So John's messengers left. Then Jesus began to speak to the crowd about John. He said, "What did you go out into the desert to see? Tall grass waving in the wind? If not, what did you go out to see? A man dressed in fine clothes? No. Those who wear fine clothes and have many expensive things are in palaces. Then what did you go out to see? A prophet? Yes, I tell you, and more than a prophet. He is the one written about in scripture. It says, I send my messenger about you. He will prepare your way for you. I tell you, no one more important than John has ever been born. But the least important person in God's kingdom is more important than he is. All the people who heard Jesus' words agreed that God's way was right. Even the tax collectors agreed. These people had all been baptized by John. But the Pharisees and authorities on the law did not accept God's purpose for themselves. They had not been baptized by John. What can I compare today's people to? Jesus asked. What are they like? They are like children sitting in a marketplace and calling out to each other. They said, we played a flute for you, but you didn't dance. We sang a funeral song, but you didn't cry. That is how it has been with John the Baptist. When he came to you, he didn't eat bread or drink wine, and you say he was a demon. But when the Son of Man came, he ate and drank as you do. And you say, this fellow is always eating and drinking far too much. He is a friend of tax collectors and sinners. All who follow wisdom prove that wisdom is right. A sinful woman. Oh, I tell you this, her many sins have been forgiven. She has laughed a lot, but the one who has been forgiven little laughs only a little. Then Jesus said to her, your sins are forgiven. The other guests began to talk about this among themselves. They said, who is this who even forgives sins? Jesus said to the woman, your faith has saved you. Go in peace. Chapter 8. The story of the farmer. After this, Jesus traveled around from one town and village to another. He announced the good news of God's kingdom. The 12 were with him. So were some women who had been healed of evil spirits and sicknesses. One was Mary Magdalene. 7 demons had come out of her. Another was Joanna, the wife of Cusa. He was the manager of Herod's household. Susanna and many others were there also. These women were helping to support Jesus and the 12 with their own money. A large crowd gathered together and people came to Jesus from town after town. As they did, he told a story. He said, a farmer went out to plant his seed. He scattered the seed on the ground. Some fell on a path people walked on, and the birds of the air ate it up. Some seeds fell on rocky places. When it grew, the plant dried up because they had no water. Other seeds fell among thorns. Jesus' mother and brothers. Jesus' mother and brothers came to see him, but they could not get near him because of the crowd. Someone told him, your mother and brothers are standing outside. They want to see you. He replied, my mother and brothers are those who hear God's word and do what it says. Jesus calms the storm. One day Jesus said to his disciples, let's go over to the other side of the lake. So they got into a boat and left. As they sailed, Jesus fell asleep. A storm came down on the lake. It was so bad that the boat was about to sink. They were in a great danger. The disciples went and woke Jesus up. They said, Master, Master, we are going to drown. He got up and ordered the wind and the huge waves to stop. The storm quieted down. It was completely calm. Where is your faith? He said. His disciples, they asked. They were amazed and full of fear. They asked one another, who is this? He commands even the winds and the waves and they obey him. Jesus heals a man controlled by demons. Jesus and his disciples sailed to the area of Gergesenes around the Lake of Galilee. When Jesus stopped on shore, he was met by a man from the town. The man was controlled by demons. For a long time he had not worn clothes or lived in a house. He lived in the tombs. When he saw Jesus, he cried out and fell at his feet. He shouted at the top of his voice, Jesus, Son of the Most High God, what do you want with me? I beg you, don't hurt me. This was because Jesus had commanded the evil spirits to come out of the man. Many times the spirit had taken hold of him. His hands and feet were chained, and he was kept under guard. But he had broken his chains, and then the demons had forced him to go out into lonely places in the countryside. Jesus asked him, "What is your name, Legion?" He replied, "Because many demons had gone into him." And they begged Jesus again and again not to order them to go into the abyss. A large herd of pigs were feeding there on the hillside. The demons begged Jesus to let them go into the pigs, and he allowed it. When the demons came out of the men, they went into the pigs. Then the herds rushed down the steep bank. They ran into the lake and drowned. Those who were tending the pigs saw what had happened. They ran off and reported it in the town and countryside. The people went out to see what had happened. Then they came to Jesus. They found the man who was now free of the demons. He was sitting at Jesus' feet. He was dressed and thinking clearly. All this made the people afraid. Those who had seen it told the others how the man who had been controlled by demons was now healed. Then all the people who lived in the country of Gerasenes asked Jesus to leave them. They were filled with fear, so he put into the boat and left. The man who was now freed from the demons begged to go with him, but Jesus sent him away. He said to him, "Return home and tell how much God has done for you." So the man went away. He told people all over town how much Jesus had done for him. A dying girl and a suffering woman. When Jesus returned, a crowd welcomed him. They were all expecting him. Then a man named Jairus came. He was the synagogue ruler. He fell at Jesus' feet. He begged Jesus to come to his house. His only daughter was dying. She was about 12 years old. As Jesus was on his way, the crowd almost crushed him. A woman was there who had a sickness that made her bleed. A sickness that lasted 12 years. No one could heal her. She came up behind Jesus and touched the edge of his cloak. Right away her bleeding stopped. "Who touched me?" Jesus asked. They all said, "We couldn't do it." Then Peter said, "Master, the people are crowding and pushing against you." But Jesus said, "Someone touched me. I know that power has gone out of me." The woman realized that people would notice her. Shaking with fear, she came and fell at his feet in front of everyone. She told why she had touched him. She also told how she had been healed in an instant. Then he said to her, "Dear woman, your faith has healed you. Go in peace." While Jesus was still speaking, everyone came to the house of Jairus. Jairus was the synagogue ruler. "Your daughter is dead," the messenger said. "Don't bother the teacher anymore." Hearing this, Jesus said to Jairus, "Don't be afraid. Just believe. She will be healed." When he arrived at the house of Jairus, he did not let anyone go in with him. He took only Peter, John, and James, and the child's father and mother. During this time, all the people were crying and sobbing loudly over the child. "Stop crying," Jesus said. "She is not dead. She is sleeping." They laughed at him. They knew she was dead. But he took her by the hand and said, "My child, get up." Her spirit returned, and right away she stood up. Then Jesus told them to go give her something to eat. Her parents were amazed, but Jesus ordered them not to tell anyone what had happened. Welcome back. We are reading chapter 9. Jesus sends out the 12 disciples. Jesus called the 12 together. He gave them power and authority to drive out all demons and to heal sicknesses. Then he sent them out to preach about God's kingdom and to heal those who were sick. He told them, "Don't take anything for the journey. Do not take a walking stick or a bag. Do not take any bread, money or extra clothes. When you are invited into a house, stay there until you leave town. Some people may not welcome you. If they don't, shake the dust off your feet when you leave their town. This will be a witness against the people living there. So the 12 left. They went from village to village. They preached the good news and healed people everywhere. Now Herod, the ruler of Galilee, heard about everything that was going on. He was bewildered because some were saying that John the Baptist had been raised from the dead. Others were saying that Elijah had appeared. Still others were saying that a prophet of long ago had come back to life. But Herod said, I had John's head cut off. So who is it that I hear such things about? And he tried to see Jesus. Jesus feeds 5,000. The apostles returned. They told Jesus what they had done. Then he took them with him. They went off by themselves to a town called Bethsaida. But the crowd learned about it and followed Jesus. He welcomed them and spoke to them about God's kingdom. He also healed those who needed to be healed. Late in the afternoon, the 12 came to him. They said, send the crowd away. They can go to a nearby village and countryside. There they can find food and a place to stay. There is nothing here. Jesus replied, you give them something to eat. The disciples answered, we have only 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. We would have to go and buy food for all this crowd. But about 5,000 men were there. But Jesus said to his disciples, have them sit down in groups of about 50 each. The disciples did so and everyone sat down. Jesus took the 5 loaves and the 2 fish. He looked up to heaven and gave thanks. He broke them into pieces. Then he gave them to the disciples to set in front of the people. All of them ate and were satisfied. The disciples picked up 12 baskets of leftover pieces. Peter says that Jesus is the Christ. One day Jesus was praying alone. Only his disciples were with him. He asked them, Who do the crowd say I am? They replied, some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah. Still others say that one of the prophets of long ago had come back to life. But what about you? He asked. Who do you say I am? Peter answered, the Christ of God. Jesus strongly warned them not to tell this to anyone. He said, the Son of Man must suffer many things. The elders will accept him. The chief priests and teachers of the law will not accept him either. He must be killed and on the 3rd day rise from the dead. Then he said to them all, if anyone wants to know me, he must say no to himself. He must pick up his cross every day and follow me. If he wants to save his life, he will lose it. But if he loses his life for me, he will save it. What good is it if someone gains the whole world but loses or gives up his very self? Suppose you are ashamed of me and my words. What then will you gain? What good is it if someone gains the whole world but loses or gives up his very self? Suppose you are ashamed of me and my words. The Son of Man will come in his glory and in the glory of the Father and the holy angels. Then you will be ashamed of me. What am I about to tell you? What I am about to tell you is true. Some who are standing here will not die before they see God's kingdom. Jesus' appearance is changed. About 8 days after Jesus said this, he went up on a mountain to pray. He took Peter, John, and James with him. As he was praying, the appearance of his face changed. His clothes became as bright as a flash of linen. 2 men, Moses and Elijah, appeared in shining glory. Jesus and the 2 of them talked together. They spoke about his coming death. He was going to die soon in Jerusalem. Peter and his companions had been very sleepy, but then they became completely awake. They saw Jesus' glory and the two men standing with him. As the men were leaving Jesus, Peter spoke up. "Master," he said to him, "it is good for us to be here. Let us put up 3 shelters. One will be for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." He didn't really know what he was saying. While Jesus was speaking, a cloud appeared. It surrounded them. The disciples were afraid as they entered the cloud. A voice came from the cloud. It said, "This is my son, and I have chosen him. Listen to him." When the voice had spoken, they found that Jesus was alone. The disciples kept quiet about this. They didn't tell anyone at the time what they had seen. Jesus heals a boy who had an evil spirit. The next day, Jesus and those who were with him came down from the mountain. A large crowd met Jesus. A man in the crowd called out, "Teacher," he said, "I beg you to look at my son. He is my only child." A spirit takes hold of him and he suddenly screams. It throws him into the pit so that he foams at the mouth. It hardly ever leaves him. It is destroying him. I begged your disciples to drive it out, but they couldn't do it. "You unbelieving and evil people," Jesus replied. "How long do I have to stay with you? How long do I have to put up with you?" Then he said to the man, "Bring your son here." Even while the boy was coming, the demon threw him into a fit. The boy fell to the ground, but Jesus ordered the evil spirit to leave the boy. Then Jesus healed him and gave him back to his father. They were all amazed at God's greatness. Everyone was wondering about all that Jesus did. Then Jesus said to his disciples, "Listen carefully to what I'm about to tell you. The Son of Man is going to be handed over to men." But they didn't understand what this meant. That was because it was hidden from them, and they were afraid to ask Jesus about it. Who is the most important person? The disciples began to argue about which one of them would be the most important person. Jesus knew what they were thinking, so he took a little child and had the child stand beside him. Then he spoke to them. "Anyone who becomes this little child in my name becomes and welcomes me," he said. "And anyone who welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me." The least important person among all of you is the most important. "Master," said John, "we saw a man driving out demons in your name. We tried to stop him because he is not one of us." "Do not stop him," Jesus said. "Anyone who is not against you is for you." The Samaritans do not welcome Jesus. The time grew near for Jesus to be taken up to heaven. So he made up his mind to go to Jerusalem. He sent messengers on ahead. They went into a Samaritan village to get things ready for him. But the people there did not welcome Jesus. That was because he was heading for Jerusalem. The disciples James and John saw this. They asked, "Lord, do you want us to call down fire from heaven to destroy them?" But Jesus turned and commanded them not to do it. They went on to another village. It cost to follow Jesus. Once Jesus and those who were with him were walking along the road. A man said to Jesus, "I will follow you no matter where you go." Jesus replied, "Foxes have holes, birds have nests, birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head." He said to another man, "Follow me." But the man replied, "Lord, first let me go and bury my father." Jesus said to him, "Let dead bury dead. You go and tell others about God's kingdom." Still another man said, "I will follow you, but Lord, first let me go back and say goodbye to my family." Jesus replied, "Suppose you start to plow and you look back. If you do, you are not fit to serve us in God's kingdom. If you do, you are not fit for service in God's kingdom.